Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this afternoon. My name is Joyce Lau, and I'm the Partnerships Manager for Southwest England and Wales here at Governors for Schools. Today's webinar is on understanding governors' responsibilities around digital safeguarding, and it is going to be presented by Smoothwall, which are the UK's market leader in providing digital safety and well-being solutions for schools. Smoothwall have also been the sponsors of our Better Governor webinar series this year, and would like to extend our thanks to them for their support. Our presenter today is Katherine Howard, and I'll hand over to Katherine in just a moment. After a couple of housekeeping points, we will be recording this webinar, and this recording, together with the slides, will be available on our websites within the next couple of days. And we ask that you use the Q&A function to post any questions you have for Katherine, and we'll try our best to go through them as time allows. So welcome, Katherine. Thank you so much for running the session for us on a very interesting and important topic. I will hand over to you to introduce yourself and get started with the session.
Thank you so much. So yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Katherine Howard. I'm Head of Education and Wellbeing here at Smoothwall. I've been in and around schools, working with schools for far too long, nearly 20 years now, over 20 years, should I say. And what I'm going to do today is talk about all of the things that us as governors, I'm a governor myself of a school, things that we can do to really understand what challenges are presented with regards to digital safeguarding. So just to put this in a bit of context around who Smoothwall are and what we do, we are, as Jo said, one of the leading digital safeguarding specialists in the country. We obviously have a variety of different products, all built around our digital safeguarding and wellbeing framework, and all of the products that we do are there to safeguard young people from harm and risk. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the aspects of that in relation to things that us as governors need to be aware of, some of the key questions that things like Ofsted or ISI will ask around digital safeguarding and wellbeing, and some of the things that we can do, not just for Ofsted, because none of us are here just for that purpose. We obviously want the best for our young people within the institutions that we support and work with. So lots of kind of key questions, things for reflection, for you to take back into your governing body meetings to kind of ensure that you have everything in place that you need to. And as Jo said, yes, you will get the slides following on from today. So just to kind of pop this into context, Keeping Children Safe obviously went live in September. We now know, because of various things, that we're not going to have any significant changes to KITSI 24. We also know that the consultation, so please let your schools know, the consultation for 2025 has gone live already. It went live about a month ago. So we're looking, the DfE are looking for really useful insights into some of the concerns, issues and barriers that you in schools, your staff in schools are facing. So as I said, no significant changes for 2024, but there will be a review for 2025. And as I say, please, the consultation has gone live for what that will look like. Working Together to Safeguard Children has been updated as of December of last year, and also Prevent. So if any of you are due Prevent training, obviously you'll be working on the newer Prevent legislation. And all of these flow into our digital safeguarding strategies around safeguarding in more broader context, but obviously in the digital environment. And a lot of the, as you know, a lot of the significant changes that happened from a Keeping Children Safe in education perspective for this year were mostly around kind of filtering and monitoring. There were some other kind of minor changes, but predominantly the filtering and monitoring aspect. So I will be focusing a little bit on that as we go through. In terms of the online harms law and Ofcom regulating that, what I would suggest is that you watch the BBC programme from BBC Breakfast that was on a couple of weeks ago. It was from 8 till 9 in the morning, and it was really, really insightful. It actually allowed 11 parents to actually converse with the director of Ofcom, and also ministers as well, around safeguarding young people in these digital environments. It was a really, really useful kind of video publication that went out from the BBC. So strongly recommend you have a look at it. Also potentially sharing it with parents through your networks, through your schools. As I said, because it was absolutely a kind of really, really good presentation that was delivered and questions that were asked about things like age verification and how the online harms law is going to kind of support that, and how Ofcom are going to actually regulate the online harms law, which is really useful. We know that mental health and wellbeing, we're seeing significant increases in mental health referrals for young people, but also for staff. And certainly in the Ofsteds I've been involved in, staff mental health and wellbeing has also been a key aspect. So again, thinking about what you're doing to really be informed around mental health and wellbeing of your children in your school. Are you doing those drop-ins as governors with your children? Are you kind of asking them key questions about their mental health and wellbeing, but also, as I say, around staff? And that also stretches to our head teachers who, you know, sometimes are very great at looking after everybody else within the context of our schools, but not necessarily don't necessarily know where for those head teachers to go in terms of mental health and wellbeing support from other agencies. So certainly as governors, we can absolutely kind of support and support that within the school environment. The Internet Watch Foundation is an amazing organisation. Their sole purpose on the planet is to take down child sexual abuse content. Some of the things that we're going to talk about in terms of some of the issues that we're seeing from a digital safeguarding perspective, the Internet Watch Foundation have got some amazing resources around for schools. So again, please direct your DSLs, your safeguarding leads in schools, directly to the Internet Watch Foundation for some of the resources that I'm going to be touching on this evening. And we will, as I say, share the slides and all the links to the resources that I talked through this evening. And as I say, if you've got any questions or anything, please pop them in the chat. I can see a few of them coming through. Report harmful content on all of your school websites. I would strongly recommend you have these 3 websites. The first one is reportharmfulcontent.com. The second is a tool called Report Remove, and this is where the child shares an indecent and naked image of themselves, a youth-produced sexual image, and they want to get that image taken down. Report Remove is a great tool that actually allows the child to go, I've made a mistake, actually I want to get that content taken down. And the third one is the CEOP Report Abuse button. So reportharmfulcontent.com, Report Remove tool, which is a tool by the Internet Watch Foundation and Childline. And the last one is CEOP Report Abuse button. When I started doing this far too long ago, most websites, if not all websites, had the CEOP Report Abuse button, which was the eye with legs. Lots of our schools, when they've had redesigns of the website, that particular link has gone. So again, just please encourage parents to report content that they see online as a digital user themselves. And also I would encourage every single one of you, of which you are all part of the digital community that we're all a member of. If you see content online that you don't like, please make sure that you're reporting it into the platforms that you're on. Just as I say, it's really important that we get this content taken down.
Sorry, Catherine, to
Yes.
interrupt. A guest is asking, could you speak a little bit slower?
Yeah, of course, no problem. Any other questions that have come through the chat, Joyce?
People are very interested in knowing about the BBC program, so they're asking like which channel this, or can you share the link with us?
Yeah, I will share all the links after the session. I'll make sure that you've got the links to all of the resources that I'm talking through. Absolutely.
I thought you could continue. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, so in terms of the updates for keeping children safe in education this year, predominantly, as I said, the updates were specifically reflecting on filtering and monitoring, and I'm going to spend quite a bit of this, the first kind of section of this session, going through some of the questions that you will need to be aware of, some of the things that you can do from a challenge perspective in terms of making that safeguarding provision is as robust as it can be within the digital environment in schools. Now, some of your schools may have things like BYOD, bring your own device, which is where the young people will purchase the device and then bring it into school. I'm going to touch on that a little bit. We're also going to touch on hopefully some new guidance that we heard about yesterday that will hopefully be published around kind of out of hours alerts around things like filtering and monitoring. So again, I'll kind of touch on that as we go through. But as governors, one of the key things that we do is we ratify policy documentation. What I'm going to ask you to do is, when you're doing that child protection policy as part of 138, I'm also going to ask you to make sure that filtering and monitoring is also mentioned in your code of conduct for staff members with regards to their devices that they're taking home. Also, in relation to those student devices and how they're accessing the technology, and thinking about those acceptable use policies for students. Okay, so if you're a primary school, please think about how you communicate your acceptable use policies to the younger year groups, because obviously most of them probably can't read those acceptable use policies. So how is that communicated in terms of them understanding how they're supposed to behave within these digital environments? And then also thinking about any visitors that might be coming into your infrastructure, into your schools. Are they made aware that when they're on site, if they utilise technologies, that they are also going to be filtered and monitored, and obviously any breaches then reported? So just making sure that if you, some schools will have a leaflet that they give out when when a visitor arrives, or you get kind of like a safeguarding briefing on the check-in system. That's another one that I've seen. Just mentioning that they will be filtered and monitored. And also around mobile phones, what's your policy on mobile phones within the school? And what's your policy around kind of visitors having mobile phones? What's the request there? And then obviously I'm going to talk in a bit more detail about the cybersecurity standards, because I have got a document to support you as governors in terms of cybersecurity. Education is second only to retail in terms of cybersecurity attacks. So something to absolutely kind of check in on in relation to whether you are protected from a cybersecurity perspective. I'm going to go through that in a bit more detail later on. And then I'm also going to touch on 221, which is around digital reputation. And I am going to ask you as governor as well to make sure that you are checking your digital reputation. What is out there about yourself as a governor, what is out there just personally, but also what's out there about the school, because that is a check that will be done as part of Ofsted or ISI. They will Google search the school to see what's out there, to see if parents have maybe complained about the parking, for example, and whether you've done anything about it. You can then talk about, actually, yes, we've done this, we've done that, we've done the other. We're completely aware of our digital reputation as a school. Okay. So in terms of filtering and monitoring, a lot of the, I think, confusion comes around what actually is it, and is there an easy way of kind of describing it? Well, the way in which we describe it is that filtering is a playground fence around the school. It keeps the really bad stuff out, but it allows things through that's needed to get through. Digital monitoring is kind of like the playground duty, the member of staff on playground duty, moderating and looking at the behaviours that are exhibited by the young people on hand to kind of pick up anything that happens and being able to deal with that in kind of real time. And that's where you need to understand the differences between the two solutions. You might, in your school, have two different solutions, a filtering provider and a monitoring provider, or you might have the same filtering and monitoring, but from the same provider, because some providers like ourselves will do both filtering and monitoring. Okay. In terms of the technical, the DFE tech filtering and monitoring standards, so within Keeping Children Safe, you've probably all read it, you will have all read it. You'll notice that there's hundreds and hundreds of links to additional supplementary documentation within there. The DFE Technical Filtering and Monitoring Standards is one of those documents. Now, the big shift that happened this year was in relation to the responsibilities in terms of things like procuring systems. That responsibility lies with the senior leaders, okay? So your head teacher, your senior leaders, your designated safeguarding leads, perhaps you as a safeguarding governor may have been involved in that process of procuring the filtering and monitoring services that you have within your school infrastructure. In terms of documenting the decision-making processes of what's allowed or what's not allowed, one of the things around monitoring is that in effect you could have one of 4 different types of monitoring. The first one is that you could have physical members of staff walking around the room, physically checking the devices. Now, the regulations and the kind of recommendation is that that is only done where you have one-to-one device ratio child to staff member. So an actual physical staff member sat with a child while they're navigating that device. And that might be, you know, absolutely plausible in settings such as SEND schools, that, you know, where you've got one-to-one member of staff to a device. The second one is a thing called filter logs. Filter logs are very technically hard to read. So if you are going and that is your monitoring that you have, and again, every school does it differently, one of the challenges I will present is, do you actually understand what is in those filter logs? Is that appropriate? Is that giving you the information? So filter logs is a form of monitoring, okay? The next one is unmanaged monitoring, and what that is a technical solution that sits on the device that gets triggered and then sends alerts to the school. There's no triaging, there's no kind of removing of false positives, it's just sent to the school for them to actually go through and look at. And again, that could be absolutely possible and absolutely kind of doable for your school. And then we have solutions like our Smoothwall monitor, which is where incidences are absolutely kind of triggered in the same way as the unmanaged. However, they're actually moderated by a safeguarding team of people who will remove what we call a false positive. And a false positive is something like a child searching for chicken breasts. It's triggered on the word breast. It's not a child looking for breasts or anything like that. It's part of a home economics project. Now, in some unmanaged solutions, that would go through to the designated safeguarding lead. They would have to go, no, that's a piece of project work, and get rid of that. So this is where schools can be informed and can review that, but the safeguarding lead and the senior leadership team within school will make the decision as to which one of those solutions is going to be most effective for you. And in terms of the overseeing of those reports, your designated safeguarding lead should be getting those reports. They should not be going to or being triaged by your ICT staff. The reason why that's so important is because your safeguarding leads within schools know the young people, already have visibility potentially of safeguarding concerns. And if they don't, they might have other information that might be really relevant to inform a decision-making process around that particular trigger that might have happened on filter or monitor. So that's why that is so vitally important, that those aren't triaged by ICT staff. Now, also, one of the key things that you saw in the documentation in the KITSI changes was one around kind of staff members understanding filtering and monitoring. So they need to understand how the filtering and monitoring works within your infrastructure, okay? And also, as I say, making sure it's in those policies, making sure that they're acted upon and it's acted upon quickly. And again, that might inform the decision-making process as to which tool from a monitoring perspective you want to utilize in order to get to the, you know, the real kind of crux of a problem or a safeguarding concern with a young person. And then in terms of the ICT person, the ICT technician in school, who are absolutely vital as part of this process as well, because they will obviously be able to inform in terms of supporting that decision-making process. They'll also be involved in time of implementing that, and potentially also in setting that up to make sure that the triggers, the alerts go to the right members of staff. So it's absolutely hand in glove with IT in terms of making sure that that the system is effective in what it is doing, but not in terms of being able to triage those incidents. That's absolutely down to your safeguarding lead. But basically, in terms of anything technical, making sure it works, installing it on devices, things like that, that's really important. But DSLs and safeguarding leads in schools and senior leaders in school have responsibility for testing and making sure that what they have in place is effective. Okay, so making sure that those filtering alerts are coming to the right place, making sure that they are running a solution, which I'm going to talk to you about later, to ensure that it is working in the best way and it is protecting children from harm. So really important that we understand those roles and responsibilities, clarifying who has responsibility for what. There's a bit more in here about in terms of that ICT provider and what they should be doing. And this is just lifted out of the filtering and monitoring standards. So I haven't, retyped it in any way, shape or form. It's literally lifted directly out of the standards. And then in terms of understanding your risk profile, so again, this is where that conversation around those potential young people where they have one-to-one device ratios, things like that, that might be a decision where you think, actually, we don't really need a technical solution to monitor those devices because we have a member of staff. Therefore, based on our risk assessment, we've worked out that actually we don't need that particular solution. So again, that's something to consider. Also, as I say, things like, other aspects like EAL, that might be an issue in terms of the monitoring system actually being able to potentially monitor in different languages, for example. So again, looking at your demographic and working out what tools are going to be best for you. And then obviously that leads into curriculum. So where you are dealing with incidences, where you are being reported, things are being reported to you, not in terms of detail of the incident itself, but in terms of a broad brush, in terms of we've had 27 of this particular type of incident. How is that being reflected in the interventions that are being put in place with staff, parents, governors, and students? And thinking about your curriculum, is your curriculum fit for purpose? And that's a consideration to really think about. And I'll talk in a bit more detail about the curriculum later on. So in terms of regular reviewing your filtering and monitoring solutions, it is very clear that you should be doing this at least annually. I recommend doing your checks on the filtering and also checking as part of our general governing body meeting, so once a term, that gets presented to us in terms of checking the efficiency, the filter and monitor is working correctly. The reason why that's so important is because there will be technical updates, there will be other things that will happen on the network that you're going to need to make sure that actually is doing what it should be doing. And I recommend, as I say, doing it as a termly thing, not just an annual thing, because we have had it where schools have left the checks, they've not done them, and actually what they've realised is certain aspects weren't being filtered or weren't being monitored as they needed to be. So again, just really doing those checks on a regular basis, and then you've got peace of mind that these things are happening and you're quite comfortable. As I say, it does say very clearly here, minimum annually. And as I say, I recommend doing those checks termly. I'll talk to you about what those checks are in a second. So what I've done is just a little bit of a checklist here for you as governing yourself, just in terms of things that you might consider. The second one down in terms of in light of purchases, obviously we're going to be shortly, some of you may have already got your budgets, but certainly if you are thinking about purchase of technology, thinking and checking, does our filtering and monitoring work on those new devices? If the answer is no, then either the device has to change or the filtering and monitoring has to change, one or the other. So again, just making sure that you are, checking that that is the case, being able to ask that informed question is really important. And then in terms of, as I say, making sure that you're receiving up-to-date information, advice and guidance that's not just a one-hit wonder delivered in September as part of safeguarding training on the first day in September, and then that's it, it's never touched again. It needs to be regular and consistent. Now, talking to schools, as I do, one of their biggest concerns is around parental engagement. How do we engage those parents with this topic who maybe are not the ones who will attend a workshop or whatever it might be? Lots of different ways, lots of suggestions that I make to schools in terms of getting the children to send a letter home, to parents saying why it's important for them to attend the workshop if you're doing a workshop. Never underestimate a good cheese and wine. Also do a survey of parents and say what are their concerns, and then you can make sure that the training will actually address their concerns. Lots of parents have think that the session will be, or they'll have a misconception that the session will be them being told off about how they use technology. So again, just thinking about that and really kind of supporting parents in terms of that information, advice and guidance. As I said, those acceptable use policies, those codes of conduct, but also those behaviour policies, making sure that all of these policies...
Sorry, Katherine.
Oh, sorry.
Can you speak a little bit more slowly?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Just make sure that all of these policies are cross-referencing. Okay, so all acceptable use policies, codes of conduct, behaviour policy, child protection policy, all cross-referencing, okay? So really, really important that we do that check. And what I would also say is where we have terminology changes within keeping children safe, so child on child, peer on peer, that is recognised and reflected in the documents that are published, that you're checking that is the case within your policy documents, okay? So I hope that helps. I've just put just an extra kind of bold kind of things for you to consider. And as I say, just making sure that you've got those annual checks, but also that you're doing those termly checks with regards to that. So I just wanted to talk you through how our monitoring service works, just so it gives you that context as to how a service might work, dependent on what you've purchased, so you're a bit more informed about how monitoring specifically works. So in terms of how our system works, and again, you'll need to get this potential slide for your solution that you have within school, so that you're more aware really of how monitoring works in your infrastructure. In our solution, it's installed onto the device. So a piece of software is installed on the laptop, the Chromebook, the MacBook, and then it's triggered on what the child types into the laptop. Okay, so they type self-harm, they type bulimia, anorexia, abbreviations, anything like that. It is then risk assessed by an AI. So the AI will look at it and go, oh no, that's chicken breasts, that's fine. Or actually, we need somebody to look at that because we're not 100% sure. So low risk things like swear words, things like that, will just go straight up to the dashboard. Anything that we think is high risk, anything that we're concerned about, or we want a physical person to look at it, it will go to this box here. And this is where our human moderators come in. These are physical people that will look at the incident in context and make the decision as to whether that's a false positive, a child looking at bombs because they're doing a project in World War II, or a child looking at how to make a bomb. Okay, and then if it's at what we call an illegal or life-threatening, we will immediately call the designated safeguarding lead and say, 10 minutes ago, Katherine Howard typed X, okay? In our system, it then also flows into CPOM's My Concern or Record Manager. Now, that is also something to check. How do your monitoring alerts get to the safeguarding lead? Okay. Now, some solutions integrate with that system with CPOM's My Concern and Record Manager. Others don't. So again, that can be a consideration in terms of what solution you're thinking of having. Okay. So in terms of the checks and how the school can report to us as governors that everything's absolutely hunky-dory in terms of filtering and monitoring, there is a website that I'm going to point you in the direction of. That website is called testfiltering.com. The school can run a report within testfiltering.com that will check that the content that is blocked is appropriate, that it's blocking all of the really bad stuff, and then it will produce a report for you. All your member of staff needs to do, your designated safeguarding lead, is to run that report in conjunction with somebody else, i.e. an IT member of staff or a head teacher. The reason I say that is because it will trigger, because it's testing 4 different sites to check content, as you see on here. So child sexual abuse content, terrorism content, and it will trigger on the filtering and the monitoring system potentially. So obviously we don't want a member of staff getting in trouble because all they've been doing is testing the system. Okay, so just make sure that that member of staff that runs that report is doing it in conjunction with another member of staff. In terms of monitoring, how long does it take for that information to get through to your designated safeguarding lead as a consideration? And also, as I say, does that integrate with your CPOM's Record Manager or My Concern systems? As in, is that getting to the right person at the right time? Okay, so these, I'd suggest that those reports are put into your governing body meetings every term to demonstrate that you are on top of what filtering and monitoring is, and more importantly, that you're checking it is working effectively in your settings. So just to repeat, testfiltering.com. That is being reviewed as well at the moment, and we're hoping that, so this is run by the South West Grid for Learning and the UK Safer Internet Centre, and they are looking at doing an additional kind of set of checks as well in the testfiltering.com version 2, which will be with us hopefully very shortly. So this is great as a check that you can do to form part of your governing body meeting. Making sure, as I say, from a monitoring perspective, that you're aware of the categories of types of incidences that you have across your school is also really important. So understanding, well, if it has triggered on monitor and you have got an alert through, what was the alert? Not the detail of the child, but actually what was the kind of context? Was it a cyberbullying incident? Was it an offensive user? What was the incident? And then also, are you putting interventions into place? We are amazing at safeguarding Katherine Howard within an inch of her life as that young person. But we need to now look at actually how we might prevent those particular types of incidences from happening by doing training with cohorts of students, by informing parents, all those types of things, okay? So really kind of thinking about how that has an impact on the wider safeguarding context is really important. So these are what I would consider and have a chat to, if you're the safeguarding governor, have a chat with your safeguarding lead and really get them to focus. They'll be brilliant at focusing on the top 3 blue boxes. They'll be amazing at safeguarding Katherine. They'll be amazing at referrals, all that kind of stuff. What we don't necessarily always have time for as a safeguarding lead in school is the bottom bit, which is actually by reflecting, could that incident not have happened in the first place? Do we need to review our filtering? Do we need to be more, do we need to block more of those types of sites? Or was that for an educational purpose? Having those conversations. Is there any intervention that we could have done with the children in advance to, you know, potentially stop that or prevent that from happening in the first place? Were there any early warning markers? So did they search for something a few weeks ago that actually now we've got the monitoring report, we know that actually that this must have happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, or 2 or 3 months ago potentially. And then also thinking about how this impacts things like staff training, information, advice and guidance that you're providing to parents, curriculum. So some of our schools will create that document, that nice little chart that you see on the screen here. And they'll say, oh gosh, actually, when we look into that information, we see that when they come back after the summer holidays, for example, cyberbullying, we've got a really big problem with cyberbullying within a particular cohort. If that is the case and you're seeing that commonality, then that might be that you can, in the curriculum, move cyberbullying from wherever it is in the curriculum and put it into that space where you know potentially that's where your concerns are going to be. So it's not, your curriculum shouldn't be a static framework and never it should move. It might be that because of the safeguarding trends that are coming out through monitoring, you can tweak your curriculum to fit. And asking for the data from your safeguarding lead. So if you're given information and you think actually it'd be really useful to be able to understand, is that a particular year group, a particular cohort of students? Are there peaks and troughs of the year when these particular types of things are happening? Again, so that can inform the curriculum. And have our interventions that we've put in place, our workshops, our assemblies, has it had an impact? Has it actually made the numbers decrease? So you might have had tons of issues with youth-produced sexual imagery. We did a workshop, fingers crossed, touch wood, that would drop. The incidents would go down. That's what you're hoping to demonstrate, that you've looked at the data, you've reviewed it, you've put interventions in place, and that has now led to those incidences going down, okay? So ask for the data, interrogate the data, talk about the data, really important. So I just wanted to move on to the cybersecurity standards. As you saw, that was part of the cybersecurity standards was part of keeping children safe in education. And This is one of the reasons why the cybersecurity standards is so vitally important. So the Southwest Grid for Learning did an interrogation of cybersecurity across education, and these statistics you see on screen are following on from that report, that interrogation of the data with schools. Interestingly, when it shows on there 62% of schools have never received any cybersecurity training, that's in relation to staff and governors as well. So what I would do is, if you have never received any cybersecurity standards or cybersecurity training, it's really important that we start to focus on that, because as I say, just remember what I said, education is second only to retail in terms of cyber attacks. And one of the things that we have seen is small little primary schools, perfect target for these people, okay? So lots and lots of different statistics, and what I've done is put some kind of support mechanisms in here, some documentation following on from the cybersecurity standards. I've taken this content you see on screen directly out of the cybersecurity standards. So things like backups. Are you happy as a governing body that you have at least 3 backup copies of your important data in school? Okay, this is a question to kind of think about and ask, okay? If you're not 100% sure, you know, ask the questions at your next governing body. Just spend some time going through those questions and interrogating it and seeing what you've currently got in place, where your gaps are, and then you can put stuff into place. The Southwest Grid for Learning have created a really great resource. It's called Cyber Secure Check for Schools, and this is a great kind of resource for your school to utilise. It's completely free. It's a comprehensive tool for schools to use in terms of looking at cybersecurity policy and practice. Okay, so alongside that one that I've shown you in terms of those key aspects of the cybersecurity standards, there's also some support mechanisms in place to be able to support you and inform your decisions around that. So just for the last few minutes, I think it's really important that we understand and talk about some of the ways in which our young people are actually utilising technology, and some of the problems that we've seen and have been highlighted through people like the Internet Watch Foundation, but also through the work I do with local authorities and MATs, is this thing sextortion. And this is huge, absolutely massive at the moment, where young people are targeted. They are told that there is a video of them, and that if they a sexual video in nature, and unless they pay a certain amount of money, they will distribute that video or that content to various people. The Internet Watch Foundation have seen that this is a huge problem, not just UK-wide, but also globally. So I have put a link in there to some resources that the Internet Watch Foundation have given out. I would just mention this so that you can go back to your safeguarding leads and just talk about sextortion, and just say, if a child came in and said that this had happened, what would we do? How would we report it? How would we support the family? Because, as I say, unfortunately, this is a real kind of worrying trend that we've seen kind of coming through. We've also got a number of applications that our young people are using, and normally in this context I would actually get you to kind of pop the answers into the Q&A, but I'm feeling like we're running out of time, and also there'd be an awful lot of comments. But these are apps that our young people are using. Now, interestingly, through the online harms law, the online harms law went through in October 2023 and is currently kind of being staged in terms of its implementation. One of the aspects around that is around age verification. Most of these apps that you see on screen have a 13 age rating. However, you don't have to, I suppose you have to legally be that, but actually we've got young people who are actually going into these platforms, making up age profiles. So I'm going to go through some of them. I'm going to talk a little bit in context about some of the concerns that we have with these. This is not the war and peace of apps. This is not kind of, you know, all of these apps are bad, or these are the ones that you need to kind of think about. This is just some of the trends that we're seeing. So I do this activity in staff training sessions, I do it in parent sessions, and I also do it in governor sessions, to actually get you to think about actually what our young people are doing. So we have Instagram. Lots of our young people will still be on Instagram. I'm really sorry. The demographic for Facebook is us. It's older people. Then we get TikTok. TikTok's brilliant. Lots of great, amazing content on there. But within all these platforms, we have a thing called algorithms. And an algorithm basically is based on how much of that content you watch, whether you like it, how you interact with it. If you like it and interact with it in a positive way, or in any way, in some cases, it will give you more of that content. Now, some of you who did maybe watch the BBC programme might have seen the interview with Ian Russell. Ian Russell was Molly Russell's dad. Molly Russell unfortunately took her life based on suicide and self-harm content found on Instagram. And the more of that type of content she watched, the algorithms behind it pushed more of that content to that young person, okay, to Molly in this case. We've also seen that with some of the other interviews that happened on the BBC programmes with regards to other young people who were maybe taking or viewing challenges within some of these spaces. So certainly things to consider, and make sure that you're providing information, advice and guidance to families about some of these applications. Yubo is an application that facilitates very similar to Tinder in its functionality. You go in, it's a social network for kids. It's got a 13 age rating. You will view people in terms of their profile, and you will swipe left or swipe right based on whether you want to be their friend or not. We've also got Threads. So Threads is part of Instagram. It's more text-based, interestingly very similar to Facebook, but we couldn't possibly call it Facebook because the kids won't want to use it. But Threads is a new bit of functionality that came out not so long ago now, that links to Instagram, but as I say, is more text-based, whereas Instagram is predominantly images and videos. X, or what used to be formerly known as Twitter. X, we've seen a big shift with the young people moving back to X, moving to X, because one, Elon Musk, and two, also chasing content, in some cases chasing harmful content, so beware of that. Steam is a platform not exclusively for gamers, but predominantly it is used by gamers alongside two others, Discord and Twitch. Again, sharing of content, links to harmful content, like all of the others. Just because it's gaming does not mean that there aren't any risks associated with it. There are absolutely risks in some of these platforms. You might have heard that WhatsApp have reduced their age ratings. Their age rating was 16. It is now 13. New bits of functionality are coming out on all of these platforms all of the times, and a lot of the things that I do is talk about privacy and security settings. So what have you checked as a user of some of this technology? Your privacy and security settings. You should be checking them every 4 to 6 weeks. That's how often new bits of functionality, new switches within the privacy and security settings come available. Be Real is an app that facilitates you taking a picture with the front camera and the back camera. And what that facilitates is sharing that content with your friends, but it prompts you at a particular time, and then you can share that particular content. Again, understanding that thing about consent is a key aspect for children. So have I got consent to take that image with both cameras? And if I haven't, because there's 25 people in the room on the other side, obviously I can't post that, because consent is a major kind of aspect of this. Snapchat, we're going to touch on later on. OME TV, so some of you might have heard of Omegle. Omegle was a platform that facilitated talking to random strangers. OME TV does the same thing, but you can also create groups like we're doing this evening. And then we also have another one called Jointly that does the same thing. It allows you to have conversations with random strangers, but the app, interestingly, allows you to access pornographic content. And then we have ChatGPT and AI as well. So all of these apps, as I say, are things to consider. And more importantly, how do we support families to gain information, advice and guidance about these applications? So sending regular bits of information about some of these apps. If you're seeing those incidences as a governor, you're seeing where the themes and trends are, bearing in mind your meetings, then we need to look at, okay, how are we sharing this particular content with parents? I've just put a little bit of a skills matrix there, not only for children, but also for you as a digital citizen yourself. Do you have positive screen time? So we're on obviously technology right now, but do you have the ability to go, actually, do you know what? I'm going to put my phone away and I'm not going to use it. We do need to think about that because we model those behaviours and our children see those behaviours ourselves. So things like screen-free meal times, you know, there are ways and things that we can do to support families to start those kind of conversations about healthy balance of technology. So just a few kind of things, but as I said, privacy and security settings really important as well. As I said, that healthy balance. Do we, as an adult, have a healthy balance of technology? We've always got our phones with us now, we're always contactable. You know, where do we draw the line where technology is a really positive thing, but also that it can be a bit of a cumbersome thing? And actually, do we have any ability to have screen-free time you know, in our lives? And that's really important that we recognise that and we're able to manage that, and that's key. Just on WhatsApp, this is the privacy checkup. So if you go into settings, into privacy, you can start the privacy checkup. And I'm going to ask every one of you, because I'm pretty sure out of the 140 people we've got on the call today, I would suggest probably at least 135 of you have got WhatsApp. I'm going to ask you to go into settings and the privacy and do the privacy checkup and see what information you are giving out using that particular app. I'm also going to put a new piece of functionality that came out just before Christmas on your radar, which is where you can share an image with somebody once and then it disappears. So using this little button here, you can also do that with audio recordings as well. And what you'll see here is it says screenshot blocked, which means that that image is not visible once, you know, you can't screenshot it. Lots of our young people are using this type of technology to share those youth-produced sexual imagery because they feel it's safer than using something like a different platform. So just something to put on your radar, just something to kind of let you know about so that you can, as I say, potentially have those conversations with governors, with DSLs, should I say. And then unfortunately, as of the 17th of July last year, the first kind of month's worth of AI-generated child sexual abuse images was picked up by the Internet Watch Foundation, and now they're literally inundated with AI-generated child sexual abuse content. This is also something I want you to think about in terms of the curriculum. Are we talking to our children about how to use AI in a really positive way, but also some of the drawbacks of AI and some of the maybe biases that exist within some of these AI platforms? I will just share with you some resources that have been created by the Southwest Grid for Learning. This is a great set of resources for Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. These are lesson plans around artificial intelligence, completely free for you to access as a school. So I have put the link in there for you to have a look at. And as I say, share it with your designated safeguarding lead, share it with your computing lead, get it into the curriculum. And then, as I say, as part of those checks that you're doing in terms of being able to report into yourselves as governors, in terms of that reputational check on the school, I'm also going to ask you to do a reputational check of yourselves. See what is out there about you. Do that check in context, so not just your name, but your name, where you live, your name, hobbies, interests, communities you're a part of, and also do a Google reverse image search. If there's a picture you use professionally, go on to Google, put in Google reverse image search and see where else on the web your image has been used. Okay, really useful thing to do. I've got lots of resources because I've got 10 minutes, 11 minutes left. I've got some resources here. These are the 3 websites that I mentioned right at the start for you to put onto your school website. This is the first one, reportharmfulcontent.com. This is what it looks like. And if you're not 100% sure how to report into platforms that you are a member of, use this website to be able to support your reporting. Okay, reportharmfulcontent.com. The second one is the COP report abuse button that I mentioned. So this is where you can report a young person, you can report somebody who's contacted a child with regards to grooming, exploitation, whatever it might be, and you can report it into the Child Exploitation Online Protection Agency. They're part of the police, and they are amazing in terms of supporting and escalating those types of incidences. And the last thing is where young people are sharing those illegal images of themselves, like youth-produced sexual imagery. The key thing is that we get it taken down as quickly as possible, and we know that children make mistakes all the time. But if they do make mistakes, the key is that they can really kind of quickly kind of get that content taken down. So this is the report remove tool in conjunction with the IWF and the Childline. So I hope you found that session useful. I hope you've got lots of information, advice and guidance, lots of things for you to take back to your governing body meetings, lots of questions to be asked of your senior leaders in schools. We will share the slides with you. I will stop sharing my presentation just to look at the chat and see if there's any questions. Yes, Anna, I will absolutely send the link to the BBC programme once I send the resources onto Joyce. So yes, absolutely, I can do that.
There are a few questions about the BBC link, and I think now know that
breakfast
you
program. That's fine.
So let's start with Andrew's question, which is about filtering processes. So he's asking filtering processes and protocols make sense when the school network is being used. What about if the students is using their own mobile data?
Yeah, so in terms of how the legislation works, the filtering and monitoring standards applies to school-owned devices, okay? So personal devices, that is entirely up to the family to moderate and look after those personal devices. We do have at Smoothwall a tool that families can use for free called Custodio. So as part of the resources that I will share with you following on from today, we can also share the link for Custodio for you to share with families around monitoring, the filtering and monitoring those personal devices, but it would be the parents' responsibility to get the insight into that. So hope that helps in terms of that.
Next question is from Gareth. Does that also work when students access the network remotely on personal devices?
No. So if they are on their personal devices, the filtering and monitoring will not work on those personal devices. It's, as I say, it's school-owned devices that filtering and monitoring is applied to.
Cool. Next question, can the list of risk keywords be customized by the school?
In some cases, with some solutions, yes, you can add keywords into certain solutions. Yes, that's not a problem. Yes, in some cases, yes. It depends on the solution you've got in place.
Again, on risk words, are the risk words flagged only when they're through a browser, or are they a keystroke locker, so keywords flagged in Word, PowerPoint, etc. too?
Brilliant question, Sam. So what I would say is it depends on the solution that you have chosen, and it's a great question to ask to the provider of your solution that you have. If you're thinking about our solution, then yes, ours is keystroke logged, so it's whatever the child types on the device is what is monitored. So yeah, but every solution does it differently. So I would say whoever your monitoring provider is, that's where you need to get that flow chart, for want of a better word, in order to understand exactly how your system works. And that's what we need to have visibility of as governors.
Next question, if TLF have a filtering and monitoring system, will central IT be running these reports, or do individual schools need to do that?
No, so individual schools will need to get access to those reports, because you will, the senior leaders in school will have the context around the safeguarding needs of the students in that setting. So it is very clear that the DSLs in the schools should be getting those reports to be able to action.
Cool. When the cyber monitoring application, AI refer an alert to human agents, are human agents intervention limited to school hours? Does this also cover school devices used outside school hours?
Okay, so again, dependent on who provides your monitoring tools, depends on what provision is given. With us, it's 24/7, so our solution is a a 24/7 solution. So if those children are taking those devices, they're school-owned devices, but they are being taken home, yes, the monitoring will work on those devices. But again, that's not the case with every solution, and that's where you need to seek guidance from whoever provides those solutions to understand how your solutions work, and that it kind of comes back to that whole understanding what you have as a provision in your site.
The next one, Heather, I'm sorry if you couldn't watch some bit, but we'll upload the recording and the PowerPoint so you can rewatch that in your own time later. Next would be, okay, from Anka. Are the school staff members allowed to use their own personal mobiles in school?
That's down to a policy decision by the school.
Okay. And then one question from Barry. Do you have a list of keywords in other languages?
So again, some monitoring solutions will have words in there from multiple languages, yes. Ours does, but that again, you need to seek advice from your individual monitoring provider and your filtering provider as to whether they do that based on what you have in place, because it's not ubiquitous across all filtering and monitoring providers.
Next question from Anthony. Does the safeguarding teacher have this level of information and training?
Oh, great question, Anthony. It depends. It really depends. We deliver, as a company, we deliver this level of training to schools and colleges up and down the country. I can't guarantee that they'll receive this. It's up to the school to work on what provision is going to work best for them. Some of them will get some of this kind of content through local authorities. Others will potentially not. So I think there's no baseline other than the standard statutory safeguarding training that happens at the beginning of the academic year. It is very clear in KITSI that you should receive digital safeguarding training as well as part of that. But it's not clarified as to exactly how or what that might look like for individual schools. So I hope that helps.
Okay, time for the last two questions. Is there a process or requirement that vendors such as Smoothwall, if the school assurance that the data they assess in order to provide the filtering services? Worry about the third-party risk where the vendor gets breached and the school data is at risk.
Yes, so in terms of all of the protocols that we have in place, yes, that's all taken care of. Oh, sorry, I can't see the question again, sorry. One of the things that I would say with that is that obviously we work with the school, we provide all of the relevant documentation about how the systems work and data protection and everything like that in terms of these kind of the protection that goes alongside that. And that goes for kind of, I would suggest every vendor will have that kind of appropriate documentation to provide that. As a provider of filtering, we're all providers of filtering now. The UK Safer Internet Centre have now started their accreditation process. We were one of the first 3 providers to go through that accreditation process from a filtering perspective. They haven't launched a monitoring accreditation yet, but we are an accredited filter provider, which means we've been through a rigorous accreditation process with the UK Safer Internet Centre with regards to making sure that our filtering is fit for purpose and doing what it absolutely must do for schools and colleges. So there is on the Southwest Grid for Learning and the UK Safer Internet Centre, there is a document which details what is appropriate filtering and monitoring, and each provider who provides filtering and monitoring to sites had to go through a checklist to say kind of what aspects they covered. And basically what happened during that accreditation process was that we were tested to ensure that we did meet those standards in order to get that accreditation. So I hope that kind of helps with that question.
I am assuming the keystroke logger is there for recording when a device is not network connected and will flag to the AI system once the device reconnects to the network.
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. The last one. Do you guys offer training for students?
We do. So we don't offer any training that is remote because it's massively low impact. We only offer on-site training for students, but we do offer off-site training for parents, governors, and staff.
Cool. I guess that's all the questions. Yeah, thank you, Katherine, for joining us today. It was a really insightful question, and I believe you guys must have taken notes, find it really useful. Just a reminder that our resources, this recording and the PowerPoint will be uploaded to our website in a couple of days, and I believe the PowerPoint is downloadable. So feel free to share this amazing resource to your school, your governing boards. So thank you again, Katherine, and I hope you guys have a nice evening.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. And again, apologies, but there is quite a lot of content, as you can appreciate, to get through. So apologies that we raced through that at 1,000,000 miles an hour. But I hope you found it useful. Have a lovely evening, and thank you very much for asking me to be here today.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Joyce. Thanks, everyone. Take care.